Hello, beautiful friends. Welcome to the floor of my apartment. I was just feeling it today. It just felt appropriate for this conversation for the Cancer full moon happening on January 6th. Who else is ready for a really emotionally connected full moon? Because I know I am. I love the role that the Cancer full moon plays in every single year because it's always going to happen during Capricorn season. It's always going to happen just as we cross the threshold of the solstice. And it's often going to occur once we've entered a new calendar year, like this year. So it's the first full moon of 2023. And because of that, I think this Cancer full moon in every single year plays a really beautiful symbolic role in the whole kind of structure of being a part of this world. It allows us to check in with our emotions and what those emotions are telling us. It allows us to process through some emotions that maybe have built up through the holiday season, through the darkness of winter for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, and any other ways that we have changed or moved through this life. For me, this really allows us to clear and allow emotions to move through, ripple through, show us their intelligence, their wisdom, and also give us a big breath in so that we can move forward in life. And I think whenever we are having the Cancer Capricorn axis highlighted and lit up like we will with this full moon, with the sun over in Capricorn and the moon over in Cancer, we're also being asked to get back to the basics of how we help ourselves feel safe, both emotionally and practically, taking care of our root systems, taking care of our nervous systems, taking care of those aspects of ourselves that really, really need to be tended to so that we can be bold. We can kind of step a little bit outside of our comfort zone or try new things or express ourselves in new ways or go on any adventures that we may be longing to go on as we open up a new calendar year. If we don't have that basic sense of trust with our emotions and how we take care of ourselves on the practical level, it is a lot harder to take risks sustainably and to try new things and to step out of our comfort zone. So this full moon is also helping us to just get back to some basics about how do we find our anchor points, how do we find our root system so that we can step out into the world in meaningful ways. And I think this full moon really does a beautiful job of doing that. So let's get into some of the details of what's going on with this full moon. One of the big aspects we're going to be seeing here with this full moon is that Mercury is on its retrograde journey through Capricorn at this time, and it is going to be meeting up with the sun during this full moon. So this is the midpoint of Mercury retrograde. We're right at the halfway point here during this full moon. So the sun and Mercury are going to be opposing the moon in Cancer. Now, Mercury retrograde is going to be all about stepping outside of linear progress, of always self-improving, of that kind of straight line narrative of how we get things done. It's going to help us to step out of that a little bit and check in with more of the circular nature of creativity, as well as getting back to our root systems and honoring who we are individually without being pulled in every direction by social media and all the noises of the world. So this is a really important opposition here with Mercury retrograde opposing this full moon. For me, this is the first theme of this full moon, and that is that this is a signal for us to notice any stories or containers that we are longing to let go of and to allow ourselves to feel that fully and let go of it. We might have some complex emotions about letting go of an identity we've had in the past, a role we've played in the past, a project that we have loved. It doesn't even have to be about something that's happened in the last calendar year or solar year. It can be something that maybe has moved through over the last several years because it has been a very emotionally charged 3 or 4 years as we've been moving through some really big things on the collective level. So this is a great full moon to allow ourselves to process those containers, those ideas, those stories that maybe held us at one point but are no longer feeling like they quite fit, even if on paper and in principle, they're positive, they're good, they're what they are. We may be longing to feel the release of letting ourselves let go of those containers and identities. And this full moon opposing Mercury retrograde is going to do just that. It's going to help us to release some of the pressure on trying to hold ourselves in the same form and the same kind of identity that maybe we've always held. I think this happens constantly, but there are just these little moments where we can let ourselves feel our emotions about that, including sadness and grief. So important. The next theme that we're going to be playing with this full moon is going to be that this full moon in Cancer is going to be sextiling our friend Uranus over in Taurus pretty perfectly. And I love this sextile. I think it's so fun. Uranus and this full moon, they're both in signs that have a lot to do with how we nurture in, how we work with the elements that are here in the space around us. But also Uranus, of course, always adds an element of change, of dynamic to the conversation. And for me, what I really noticed about this sextile is that this is about how sometimes change in the unfamiliar is the safe way. And that sometimes the most loving thing and the safest thing can be the things that are transforming. And I think the part of us that is a little scared of change, is a little nervous about things shifting, will often kind of pull back from change and say, oh, no. It's best that we stay with this familiar. This is where we're safest. This is where we're the most held. And when we are maybe shifting our work or shifting the way we express ourselves or shifting a living situation, that part of ourselves may feel that we are making a big mistake. But I think this sextile just really acknowledges that sometimes, and it's not always, right, but sometimes being safe and loved and taking the safest route is going to be through change. And that there's a lot of love and support in change. There's a lot of love and support in allowing ourselves to let go and move into the next cycle. And I think that this sextile is really there to soothe the part of ourselves that maybe is a little bit skeptical about this idea of change and how can it be safe when we know what we have right here. And there's just going to be an element of playing with that. And I would highly recommend, I'm going to be doing an activation that really focuses on this actually over on my Patreon. If you are looking for guidance, I would love to see you there. But just ask some questions about what you may be holding on to and how you define that as safety. And also what you may be scared is changing. How can it also signify a deep sense of safety and deep love and deep curiosity for your journey through this life? Those will be great questions to ask yourself as we move through. There's one final theme that I think is important for this full moon in Cancer, and that is, and I'm looking at my notes here, I had so many ideas moving through how to consolidate this conversation about this Cancer full moon. I think that this full moon is a really wonderful time to be still enough to hear the solutions that are with us right here, right now. You know, our culture is so invested in this idea of pushing forward, of, you know, if you have something that you don't know exactly how it's going to work out or you're a little concerned about, it feels like you need to just keep staying active on it, like pursuing it, fixing it, fiddling with it, pushing yourself, moving forward. And sometimes when we're doing that, we miss the opportunity to really hear what we already know right here, right now. And I think this is a crucial component of this Cancer full moon, is just letting ourselves work with the wisdom that is just waiting right here, working with the elements and the pieces that are right here. We don't need to improve ourselves into 2023 when we've, you know, gotten super buff, or when we've, you know, accomplished the thing, or when we've practiced something enough, or when we've moved. There's wisdom waiting here. And I think it goes back to, it's kind of a cliche idea, but I think it's also a tenet of working with Cancerian energy, which is emotional intelligence. The intelligence that is in our emotions waiting to be heard through our bodies, the intelligence that it can only really be heard when we allow ourselves to step out of our linear process and move into our bodies, move into our emotions, and check in with ourselves. There's a lot of wisdom waiting there that just wants to be heard and given a chance to be acted upon in a really intentional way in the coming months as we move through the beginning of this new year. And I think it just really comes back to some simple messages about what it means to be connected to ourselves. And all of you that have worked in therapy. I know I have some therapists out there, and I just love you all so much. Therapists are my people. I've also had plenty of therapy and worked through, but we all know that when we allow ourselves to feel the emotion about something, to grieve it, to let the wave move through, it's not that we're ever done grieving, right? It's not that it's about getting the emotion done and then just being done with it. But when we let a wave move through, when we let that emotional intelligence move through, what happens is relief and a deeper sense of connection to the wisdom that's within us. And I think that this full moon just brings us back to that core principle in such a beautiful way. And like I said, I just think there's something about doing that at the beginning of the year that allows for some breath, some recognition, some softness. It's not about pushing to make the year happen, pushing to make ourselves something. It's about a moment of deep grace and deep love and deep safety in our changing selves. And that to me is just, that's the good stuff in life. That's what keeps me going in this life. I'll get emotional thinking about it. So let's pull a couple cards. I am working with, this is a deck my sister got me a couple years ago for my birthday, the Cat Tarot. As a Leo, I think I'm legally required to have a Cat Tarot deck, and I know there are many cat lovers out there, and this deck is so full of fun and whimsy and wisdom and play, and it just makes me smile. So let's see what wants to come out. The Ten of Cups. It's so cute. I love that. Ten of Cups is so beautiful, so soulful, right? Tens are about full circle, understanding something in its fullness and its completeness, and just taking a moment to stand there at the end of that cycle. King of Wands, very interesting. I'm actually going to leave it there because I love these two cards together. They're an unlikely pair, but I think that they make a lot of sense. It's kind of what I was just saying about emotional release followed by a clarity and an integrity. And I think, you know, Ten of Cups is about the joy, the gratitude. It's that feeling of just being like, wow, I can't believe all these beautiful things. But Ten of Cups, I think, also inherently has a bittersweetness to it because it's about understanding that everything kind of comes and goes and passes, that time passes, that things shift, and that as we like grow into beautiful places, we also are letting go of places we have been and acknowledging that that process has been at play. So for me, the emotional integrity of Ten of Cups is really, really important. It's not just about skipping off into the sunset through a rainbow and being done. It's about that bittersweet aliveness of life and emotion. And as we acknowledge that and let ourselves feel it, we're followed up here by the King of Wands. And in this deck particularly, the King of Wands represents a confident self, a self that takes on the leadership role in our own lives. And I think this is exactly the process that this Cancer full moon brings about. We first dive into our emotions, the bittersweetness, the release, the opening, the curiosity about safety within change. And within that, we are able to connect with a confident self that knows that every time we have a deep emotional experience moving through the rest of this year, every time we have a moment where it feels like I just can't handle this wave of grief, I can't handle this stress, we feel our emotions, and then we are still here and we find that inner King of Wands ability to connect with ourselves. And I think that there's a reassurance here in this message about that process moving through this year and being a part of it. And there being a deep confidence in knowing that we will have waves of sadness and overwhelm and confusion and not knowing and surprises. We will. We're humans. We live in a world full of that. That's an inherent part of this. And we will check in with our emotions. We will connect with that emotional intelligence and we will find our footing. And I think that that can be some of the most confidence boosting messaging you can ever have. And like I mentioned, I'm going to be activating this full moon with a series of questions about safety and change that I think will be really, really beautiful. I'd love to see you over on my Patreon. And we are also getting through softly crossing the threshold into a new year, but this is something that's accessible at any time. And it is just a way to begin the new year really, really softly and gently. I didn't want to make it too heavy. And that's available to everyone over on Patreon. Any patron that signs up to any tier can access all of that good stuff. So I'd love to see you over there. We're going to be doing some beautiful Zoom calls as well on my upper tier there. So I'd love to see you in any of those spaces. And of course you can find me on my Instagram, and I'd love it if you stuck around here. We're going to be doing some really beautiful things in the coming months, and I'm feeling really emotional and tender because I know that I'm going to be having to just be more myself here in this space and be brave enough to try some new things and allow the old to pass away and the new to open up. And I'm very curious about this new year. There's probably going to be a lot of crying on camera with you all as we move through this year. So I'm so looking forward to seeing you here. Please like, subscribe, and let me know what the Cancer full moon means to you. All of that really helps me keep doing my work here. So I will see you all very soon. Have a beautiful full moon in Cancer.